The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, its dark hull stretching 5 kilometers from end to end. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the orbital station New Horizon, watching the vessel through the reinforced viewports. The ship looked like nothing humanity had ever built, all curved surfaces and strange angles that seemed to bend light around them. Jake had been in space for 15 years, commanding defense stations and patrol ships throughout the solar system. He had seen asteroid miners, cargo haulers, and military vessels of every design humanity could imagine. This thing made them all look like toys. The alien ship dwarfed even the largest human battleships, its surface covered in what looked like weapons that could crack a moon in half. The communication array crackled to life behind him. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez turned from her station, her face pale. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. It's coming through on all frequencies simultaneously, and somehow it's translating itself into perfect English." Jake nodded grimly. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered and revealed a creature that made Jake's stomach turn. The alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in dark scales that shifted color in the light. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in clawed hands that looked capable of crushing steel. Its head was elongated, with 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows and a mouth full of teeth that belonged on a predator. When it spoke, its voice was deep and resonated with authority. "Primitive inhabitants of the 3rd planet, I am Ambassador Zeth Kalar of the Vrex Dominion, speaking for the Galactic Council. Your species has expanded beyond your birth world without permission from the proper authorities. This violation of galactic law cannot continue." Jake glanced at Rodriguez, who was recording everything. The alien continued, its 6 eyes seeming to stare directly at them through the screen. "The Galactic Council has governed this galaxy for 50,000 of your years. We have brought order to chaos, peace to warring species, and prosperity to those wise enough to accept our guidance. Your species will now join this great confederation under the following terms." The alien's image was replaced by a document written in symbols that somehow rearranged themselves into English text. Jake read the demands with growing anger. Humanity was to abandon all colonies beyond Earth's moon, reduce their population by half within 10 years, surrender all military vessels to council oversight, and accept alien governors on every human world. "These terms are non-negotiable," Zeth Kalar's voice continued as his image returned. "You have 72 of your hours to signal your acceptance. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences for your species. We have dealt with over 800 species in our expansion across this galaxy. All have seen the wisdom of cooperation when presented with our terms." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake stared at the blank screen for a long moment before turning to his communications officer. "Get me Admiral Clark on priority channel. Tell him we have a situation that requires immediate attention." Within an hour, every human leader in the solar system was connected via quantum link. Admiral Ben Clark presided over the emergency session from his headquarters on Luna Base, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the alien demands. President Helen Carter joined from Earth, along with Colonial Governor Frank Davis from Mars and dozens of other officials. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Admiral Clark said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 40 years defending humanity's interests. "These aliens want us to abandon our colonies, kill half our population, and become their slaves." Dr. Lisa Grant, Earth's leading expert on xenobiology, leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, I've been analyzing their transmission and the technology they use to contact us. Their ship is definitely more advanced than anything we have, but there are some interesting anomalies in their approach." "Explain," Clark ordered. "They're using some kind of neural scanning technology to translate their language into ours. But when I ran diagnostic scans, I noticed something strange. Their scanners seem to be having difficulty reading human brain patterns. It's as if our neural structure is somehow incompatible with their systems." Governor Davis frowned. "What does that mean for us?" "I'm not entirely sure yet, but it might explain why they're giving us time to consider their demands instead of simply taking what they want. Every other species they mentioned might have been more predictable, easier to control through whatever methods they normally use." President Carter looked around the virtual meeting room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "The question before us is simple. Do we surrender to these aliens or do we fight?" Admiral Clark's expression hardened. "Ma'am, with respect, I don't think that's the question at all. The question is whether we're going to let some alien bullies tell us how to live our lives. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Some argued for caution, pointing out that humanity was clearly outmatched in terms of technology. Others insisted that the alien demands were completely unacceptable regardless of the consequences. Through it all, one fact became increasingly clear. Nobody wanted to surrender. Captain Morrison had remained quiet during most of the discussion, but as the debate wound down, Admiral Clark asked for his input. "Captain, you've had the most direct contact with these aliens. What's your assessment?" Jake thought about the alien ambassador's arrogant tone, the casual way it had dismissed humanity as primitive, and the assumption that humans would simply roll over like apparently every other species had done. "Sir, I think they expect us to be afraid. They expect us to negotiate because that's what everyone else has done. But I've been thinking about something my grandfather used to say." "What's that, Captain?" "He used to tell me that you can't negotiate with a bully. You can only show them that you're not afraid and that you'll fight back if they push you. These aliens think they can threaten us into submission because it's worked for them before." Admiral Clark nodded slowly. "And your recommendation?" "We tell them no, sir. We tell them that humanity doesn't surrender to threats and we don't abandon our people. If they want to fight us, then we'll give them a fight they'll never forget." The room fell silent as Clark considered this. Finally, he turned to President Carter. "Ma'am, I believe Captain Morrison speaks for all of us. We've never bowed to tyrants before, and we're not starting now." President Carter nodded. "Then it's settled. Prepare a response message for transmission to the alien vessel." An hour later, Jake stood on the bridge of New Horizon as the reply was broadcast to the alien ship. The message was brief and to the point. "The United Earth government rejects your demands in their entirety. Humanity will not surrender its colonies, will not reduce its population, and will not submit to foreign rule. If you wish to discuss a mutually beneficial relationship between our species, we are willing to talk as equals. If you wish to threaten us, then you will find that humans do not respond well to threats. The choice is yours." On the alien vessel, Ambassador Zethkalar received the transmission with complete bewilderment. In 50,000 years of galactic expansion, no species had ever simply refused to negotiate. The concept was so foreign to the Galactic Council that they had no protocols for dealing with it. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. The Council Prime Nexus received Ambassador Zethkalar's report 3 days after humanity's refusal, and the reaction was immediate chaos. High Chancellor Morthak sat in the central chamber surrounded by representatives from 12 alien species, each more confused than the last. The holographic display showed Earth's solar system, with red markers indicating human colonies that should have been abandoned by now. "Impossible," declared Councillor Yethron of the Zolothian Empire, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "No species refuses to negotiate. It violates every principle of survival and logic." High Chancellor Morthak studied the historical records floating before him. 847 first contacts over 50 millennia, and every single species had eventually come to the negotiating table when faced with the Council's superior technology and implied threats. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, demonstration of power, negotiation, and finally submission. "Perhaps they did not understand our message," suggested Councillor Kethmar of the Hegemony States. "Their translation systems may be primitive." Zethkalar's scaled head shook firmly. "No, honored Councillor." Their response was clear and direct. They rejected our terms completely and stated they would only discuss matters as equals. They showed no fear of our capabilities. The chamber fell silent. The concept of a species refusing to acknowledge the Council's authority was so alien to their experience that they struggled to process it. For 50,000 years, their expansion had relied on psychological dominance rather than actual warfare. Most species surrendered after seeing recordings of what happened to those who resisted too long. "What of their military capabilities?" asked Morthak. "Are they perhaps stronger than our initial scan suggested?" "Negative, High Chancellor. Their largest vessels are less than 2 kilometers in length. Their weapons are primitive chemical and nuclear systems, and their fastest ships require weeks to travel distances we cross in hours. By every metric, they should be completely outmatched." While the Council debated, Commander Ryan Murphy led his team through the corridors of the alien scout ship they had captured during the first contact. The vessel had been damaged by a micrometeor, and forced to make emergency repairs near Jupiter, giving humanity their first chance to examine Council technology up close. The alien ship was unlike anything human engineers had ever seen. The walls seemed to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that flowed seamlessly into mechanical systems. The power source was a mystery that defied human understanding. Yet somehow Ryan's team was making progress in deciphering its secrets. The energy conduits follow patterns similar to neural networks, reported engineer Kate Wilson as she carefully removed a panel. It's like the ship thinks for itself, but we're starting to understand how to communicate with it. Dr. Lisa Grant worked alongside the engineering team, her xenobiology expertise proving invaluable in understanding the biological components of the alien technology. Their systems are designed for species with very predictable thought patterns, she explained to Ryan. Everything operates on assumptions about how minds work, but human brains don't follow those assumptions. Is that why their scanners had trouble reading us? Ryan asked. Exactly. They've never encountered a species with neural patterns as chaotic as ours. We think in ways they can't predict or control. Back on the Council vessel, Zethkalar received new orders from the Nexus. The Council had decided to demonstrate their power by destroying a human outpost, expecting this show of force to bring the stubborn species to their senses. The target chosen was Titan Station, a mining facility on Saturn's largest moon. Colonel Amy Rodriguez had been expecting this move. As soon as the alien ultimatum expired, she began evacuating Titan Station while preparing it for what she privately called the biggest surprise party in human history. The miners and their families were shuttled to safety while Rodriguez's team worked frantically to implement a plan that would have been considered insane by any reasonable military standard. Are you sure about this, Colonel? Asked Sergeant Pete Collins as he helped wire the last of the nuclear charges. We're talking about sacrificing a billion-credit facility. Amy grinned as she activated the newly installed alien weapons they had reverse-engineered from the captured scout ship. Pete, my grandfather fought in World War III. He always said that sometimes you have to burn down your own house to keep the enemy from taking it. Besides, we're not just destroying a station, we're sending a message. The Council fleet arrived at Titan 3 days later, expecting to find a functioning human outpost filled with terrified workers. Instead, they found what appeared to be an abandoned facility with minimal life signs. Zethkalar ordered the attack, confident that news of Titan's destruction would reach Earth and finally convince humanity to negotiate. The fleet moved into attack formation, their massive ships powering up weapons that could crack a moon's surface. They had used this tactic hundreds of times before, reducing rebellious colonies to rubble while recording everything for later broadcast to the target species' homeworld. What they did not expect was for the abandoned station to suddenly light up with defensive systems that should not have existed. Hidden weapons arrays emerged from concealed positions, firing modified alien energy weapons that the humans had somehow learned to operate. More shocking still, the entire station was rigged with nuclear devices positioned to maximize damage to any fleet in attack formation. Amy Rodriguez watched from a safe distance as Titan Station erupted in a controlled explosion that turned Saturn's moon into a temporary star. The blast was precisely calculated to catch the alien fleet at the worst possible moment, when their shields were configured for offense rather than defense. 3 Council warships vanished instantly in the nuclear fire, while 2 others suffered critical damage and began drifting helplessly through space. The surviving vessels retreated in panic, their crews unable to comprehend what had just happened. Message sent, Amy reported to Admiral Clark, though I don't think they understood it the way we intended. On the Council flagship, Zethkalar stared at the tactical display in complete shock. No species had ever sacrificed valuable infrastructure for a tactical advantage. The concept of deliberately destroying one's own resources to harm an enemy was completely outside Council experience. They destroyed their own facility to attack us, he reported to the Nexus, his voice filled with disbelief. They turned their mining station into a weapon and used it against our fleet. The response from High Chancellor Morthak came quickly. That is impossible. No rational species would sacrifice resources for short-term tactical gain. But the evidence was undeniable. 3 ships of the Council fleet were gone, destroyed by a species that the Council had dismissed as primitive. Even worse, the humans had somehow acquired and modified Council technology in a matter of days. accomplishing in hours what typically took other species decades to understand. Dr. Kevin Walsh, humanity's chief military strategist, prepared the response message that would be broadcast to the retreating alien fleet. His words were simple but carried a weight that would echo across the galaxy. You wanted to negotiate. Here are our terms: leave our space, never return, and we might let you live. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a species that not only refused to negotiate, but had the audacity to offer terms of their own. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat. News of humanity's victory at Titan spread across the galaxy faster than the Council could contain it. For 50,000 years, the Council had maintained absolute control over galactic communications, but they had never encountered a species that refused to follow their information protocols. Human signals bounced between relay stations, carrying the impossible story to every corner of known space. Agent Maria Santos had been working in the shadows since the first alien contact, using her expertise in computer systems to penetrate Council networks. The captured alien technology from the scout ship had given her the key she needed to access their communication systems. What she found there changed everything she thought she knew about galactic civilization. The Council's database contained records of thousands of species, each one following the same pattern: initial contact, demonstration of power, negotiation, and finally submission. But as Maria dug deeper into the files, she discovered something shocking. The Council had never actually fought a real war. Their entire empire was built on the psychological manipulation of other species, using fear and implied threats rather than actual military superiority. Admiral Clark, "You need to see this," Maria reported from her hidden base on Europa. "The Council isn't what they pretend to be. Their whole system depends on other species being afraid of them. When a species refuses to be intimidated, they don't have a backup plan." The intelligence Maria had gathered was immediately transmitted to resistance movements throughout the galaxy. Species that had been under Council rule for centuries suddenly learned that their oppressors were not the invincible force they had claimed to be. The psychological chains that had bound the galaxy began to crack. On the world of Kethar Prime, General Vextar received Maria's data package with growing excitement. His people had been warriors for millennia before the Council arrived and convinced them that resistance was futile. The Cathari had superior reflexes, natural armor, and a culture built around honor in battle, but they had been beaten down by centuries of psychological conditioning. "Brothers and sisters," Vextar announced to his gathered clan leaders, "we have been living a lie. The Council fears us more than we fear them. They have kept us docile with tricks and mind games, but now we know the truth." The Cathari rebellion began within hours of Vextar's announcement. Across 17 star systems, Cathari warriors rose against their Council overseers using tactics they learned from studying human military doctrine. They struck fast and hard, hitting Council facilities before disappearing into the asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. They knew better than any outsider. The rebellion caught the Council completely unprepared. Their security forces were designed to deal with peaceful protests and minor civil disobedience, not coordinated military strikes by a species that remembered how to fight. Within a week, the Cathari had seized control of 6 star systems and were advancing on the Council regional headquarters. Captain Dale Fisher led the human expeditionary force that arrived to support the Cathari uprising. His ship, the Independence, was one of humanity's newer vessels, built incorporating the alien technology they had captured and reverse-engineered. It was faster than anything the Council had ever faced, with weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien power sources. "General Vextar, this is Captain Fisher of the United Earth Defense Force," Dale transmitted as his ship entered the Cathar system. "We understand you're having some trouble with uninvited guests." The Cathari general's response came back filled with what sounded like laughter. "Captain Fisher, your arrival is most welcome. We have been waiting a long time for allies who understand the value of telling tyrants where they can go." The Independence became a symbol of hope as it appeared in system after system, teaching alien rebels how to fight using human military tactics. The Council's predictable strategies, designed to work against civilized species that followed established rules of warfare, proved useless against enemies who had learned from humanity's chaotic approach to combat. Dr. Lisa Grant, worked with alien scientists who had joined the rebellion, sharing the biological insights that had helped humanity resist Council mind control techniques. Many species discovered that their own suppressed innovations were far superior to the technology the Council had forced them to use. "The Council has been deliberately keeping you primitive," Lisa explained to a gathering of rebel scientists. "They give you just enough technology to be dependent on them, but they suppress anything that might make you independent or dangerous. On Zephyr Colony, the bird-like E3 species used their natural flight abilities, combined with human-designed weapons to conduct aerial strikes that the Council's ground forces could not counter. The aquatic hydros took control of their oceanic homeworld by using submarine tactics that no Council commander had ever encountered. Each victory inspired more uprisings. Species that had never considered rebellion suddenly found the courage to resist when they saw others succeeding. The psychological hold that had kept the galaxy in line for millennia was crumbling faster than the Council could respond. High Chancellor Morthak watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy with growing panic. Rebellions had erupted in over 300 systems, and Council forces were being defeated everywhere they tried to reassert control. The carefully maintained order of 50,000 years was collapsing in a matter of weeks. "This is impossible," Morthak declared to his council. "These species were pacified centuries ago. They should not have the will to resist, much less the knowledge of how to fight effectively." Councillor Yethron's crystalline form flickered with urgent colors. "High Chancellor, we are receiving reports that human ships are appearing in rebel systems providing training and equipment. They are spreading their infection of resistance throughout our territory. The situation grew worse when the Council's own client species began defecting. The Merchant Guild of Proxima, which had prospered under Council protection for millennia, suddenly announced their neutrality and began trading with the rebels. The technocracy of Sigma Draconis released all their suppressed research data to rebel scientists. They are teaching the galaxy that we can be defeated," reported Zethkalar from his damaged flagship. "Every victory by these rebels proves that our authority is not absolute." The Council faced a choice they had never encountered before. For 50,000 years, they had maintained order through the threat of overwhelming force, but they had never actually had to use that force against a coordinated galaxy-wide uprising. Their ultimate weapon, the Planet Killer, had never been deployed against anything more than isolated rebel colonies. Chancellor Morthak made the decision that would either restore Council authority or destroy it completely. "Prepare the Worldbreaker for deployment. We will make an example of the human homeworld that will end this rebellion once and for all." The massive dreadnought emerged from its hidden base in the galactic core, its planet-killing weapon capable of cracking worlds in half. It was the Council's ultimate symbol of power. A ship so large and powerful that its very existence had prevented wars for millennia. But as the Worldbreaker set course for Earth, Morthak made a crucial mistake. He assumed that the sight of the Planet Killer would terrify humanity into surrender, just as it had terrified every other species for thousands of years. He did not understand that humans had a very different response to overwhelming threats. Throughout human history, when faced with impossible odds, humanity had developed a simple philosophy. If you are going to lose anyway, make sure your enemy remembers the cost of victory. The Council was about to learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. Captain Jake Morrison received the warning from deep space sensors and smiled grimly as he prepared Earth's defenses. The aliens were bringing their biggest ship to intimidate humanity, but they had made one critical error. They still thought this was about negotiation, about demonstrating superior force to achieve surrender. They did not understand that humanity had already decided the outcome of this war the moment they refused to negotiate. The galaxy was about to witness something that had not happened in 50,000 years. The total defeat of a Council planet killer by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The Worldbreaker emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, like a nightmare made real. The massive dreadnought stretched 20 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull covered in weapons that could sterilize entire continents. At its heart sat the Planet Killer, a weapon that had never failed to crack a world in half when properly deployed. Captain Steve Harper stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Defiance, watching the alien monster approach through the viewscreen. His entire fleet consisted of 37 ships, the largest being barely 2 kilometers long, By every measure of military logic, they were about to face impossible odds against an enemy that outgunned them 1,000 to 1. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel," reported Communications Officer Janet Walsh. "They're demanding our immediate surrender." Steve nodded grimly. "Put it through." High Chancellor Morthak's image appeared on the screen, his alien features radiating confidence and authority. "Humans of Earth, you see before you the Worldbreaker, mightiest vessel in the galaxy. Its planet-killer weapon is charging as we speak. You have one final opportunity to surrender before your world is destroyed as an example to the rebels you have inspired." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Steve looked around at his crew, seeing determination mixed with fear in their faces. They all knew they were probably going to die, but none of them suggested surrender. "Tactical analysis," Steve ordered. Lieutenant Commander Mike Torres consulted his instruments. "Sir, the alien ship is massive, but it's built for intimidation rather than actual combat. Their weapon systems are powerful but slow to target, and our scans show they have minimal point defense against smaller vessels." Engineer Nicole Brown had been studying the captured Council technology for months, and her analysis was crucial to their survival. "Captain, I found something important about their planet killer. It requires 17 minutes to charge to full power, and during that time their targeting system becomes extremely vulnerable to interference." "What kind of interference?" Steve asked. "The weapon locks onto gravitational signatures and geological markers to ensure a clean hit that will crack the planet's core. But if we can create enough random motion and energy disturbances around their ship, their targeting computers won't be able to get a stable lock." Steve smiled for the first time since the alien ship arrived. "Are you telling me that if we keep moving in unpredictable patterns, they can't hit us or the planet?" "Exactly, sir. Their technology is designed to fight against civilized opponents who follow predictable military tactics. But human combat doctrine is based on chaos and adaptation, which their systems can't process effectively. The human fleet moved into attack formation, but not the kind of formation any alien commander would recognize. Instead of orderly battle lines, the ship spread out in seemingly random patterns based on Earth's weather systems and ocean currents. Each vessel followed a different algorithm designed to be completely unpredictable. The Council weapons operators tried to target the approaching human ships but found their systems unable to achieve target locks. The human vessels moved like a swarm of angry insects, never staying in one place long enough for the massive alien guns to track them. "This is impossible," declared Weapons Master Zethkin aboard the Worldbreaker. "Their movement patterns follow no known tactical doctrine. Our targeting systems cannot predict where they will be." High Chancellor Morthak watched the tactical display with growing frustration. "Activate the planet killer. Once Earth is destroyed, these ships will have no reason to continue fighting." The massive weapon began its charging sequence, drawing power from the Dreadnought's core reactors. Energy readings spiked throughout the ship as the planet killer prepared to fire. But as the weapon charged, the ship's other systems became increasingly vulnerable to disruption. The human ships used this opportunity to close distance rapidly, firing everything they had at the alien Dreadnought's shields. Their weapons were smaller than the Council's massive guns, but they were faster and more accurate. More importantly, they were targeting specific weak points that Nicole Brown had identified in the alien ship's design. Lieutenant Commander Frank Davis led the first wave of fighters through a gap in the alien point defenses. His squadron consisted of modified mining ships equipped with human-alien hybrid weapons, fast enough to avoid the Council's heavy guns but tough enough to survive close combat. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy this thing," Frank transmitted to his pilots. "We just need to disrupt their targeting long enough for the big guns to do their work." The fighters swarmed over the Worldbreaker's hull like metallic wasps, striking at sensor arrays and communication nodes. The Council crew had never experienced anything like it. Their ship was designed to fight other capital vessels at long range, not to defend against swarms of small craft attacking from every direction. As the planet killer continued charging, its targeting system struggled to maintain a lock on Earth through the chaos surrounding the ship. The human fleet's random movements created enough gravitational and electromagnetic interference to confuse the weapon's sensors, while the fighter attacks disrupted the ship's ability to compensate for the interference. Nicole Brown monitored the alien weapon's power buildup from her station aboard the Defiance. "Captain, their planet killer is at 60% charge, but their targeting accuracy is down to less than 20%. If we can maintain this level of disruption for another 8 minutes, they won't be able to get a clean shot. But the Council had one more trick to play. Zeth Kalar led a squadron of Council fighters against the human ships, hoping to clear enough space for the planet killer to target properly. The alien fighters were faster and more heavily armed than anything humanity had built. But they suffered from the same problem as their mothership. They were designed to fight predictable enemies. The human pilots used tactics that would have been considered insane by any civilized military. They flew through asteroid fields at maximum speed, used gravity wells to slingshot around planets, and deliberately put themselves in positions where any rational pilot would expect them to be destroyed. Commander Ryan Murphy led a desperate boarding mission against the Worldbreaker itself, using captured alien technology to breach the Dreadnought's hull. His team consisted of volunteers who knew they probably would not survive, but who understood that disrupting the planet killer was worth any sacrifice. Security teams. "We have intruders in Section 7, announced the ship's computer as Ryan's team fought their way through the alien corridors. The Council crew panicked at the unprecedented situation of enemies actually inside their vessel, something that had never happened in 50,000 years of galactic dominance. Ryan's team reached the reactor core just as the planet killer reached 85% charge. They planted charges that would turn the Dreadnought's own power source into a weapon against itself, but they needed to time the explosion perfectly to achieve maximum effect. "Reactor charges set," Ryan reported to Captain Harper. "When this thing goes off, it's going to take half the ship with it." Steve watched the tactical display as the planet killer reached 90% charge. The weapon was almost ready to fire, but its targeting system was still disrupted by the chaos around the ship. "It was going to be close. All ships, prepare for final assault," Steve ordered. "We've got one chance to end this." The human fleet converged on the Worldbreaker from every direction, pouring everything they had into the alien ship's weakened shields. At the same time, Ryan's charges detonated deep within the Dreadnought's core, sending massive explosions throughout the vessel. The planet killer, stressed beyond its design limits by the power fluctuations and targeting disruptions, suffered a catastrophic overload. Instead of firing at Earth, the weapon turned its devastating energy inward, tearing the Worldbreaker apart from the inside. The explosion could be seen from Earth as a new star appeared briefly in the sky. The Council's ultimate weapon, their symbol of absolute power, had been destroyed by a species they considered primitive. The psychological impact of this defeat would echo across the galaxy for generations. The destruction of the Worldbreaker sent shockwaves across the galaxy that could be felt on every world under Council rule. For 50,000 years, the planet killer had been the ultimate symbol of Council authority, a weapon so powerful that its mere existence prevented wars and crushed rebellions before they could begin. Now it was nothing but glowing debris drifting through Earth's solar system. Ambassador Grace Kelly stood before the newly formed Free Species Alliance, addressing representatives from over 200 worlds that had thrown off Council rule in the weeks following humanity's victory. The meeting hall on the neutral world of Haven Station buzzed with excitement as species that had been enemies under Council manipulation discovered they could work together as equals. "The age of fear is over," Grace announced to the assembled delegates. "No longer will any species bow to tyrants who demand submission through threats. We stand here today not as subjects of an empire, but as free peoples choosing our own destiny." The applause that followed came from creatures of every imaginable shape and size. The crystalline Xylothians chimed in harmonious tones while the warrior Cathari roared their approval. Even the normally quiet E3 filled the air with celebratory song. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was united not by fear but by hope. Meanwhile, the surviving Council members retreated to their core worlds, their vast empire crumbling around them faster than they could comprehend. High Chancellor Morthak sat in his chambers on the Council homeworld, staring at reports of defections and rebellions that arrived hourly. 3/4 of their territory had declared independence, and more systems joined the rebellion every day. How did this happen? Morthak asked his remaining advisors. "We ruled for 50,000 years. Our authority was absolute." Councillor Yethron's crystalline form flickered with dim colors. "High Chancellor, we built our empire on the assumption that all species would eventually submit to superior force. We never considered what would happen if a species simply refused to acknowledge our superiority. The desperate council sent message after message to humanity, offering increasingly generous terms for negotiation. They promised technology, territory, even shared governance of the galaxy if humans would only agree to talk. Each offer was more desperate than the last, revealing just how completely their position had collapsed. Captain Jake Morrison received these transmissions aboard New Horizon with grim satisfaction. The aliens who had arrived with such arrogance months earlier were now begging for mercy. His response was broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. "We already told you our terms. You should have listened the first time." Dr. Lisa Grant led the effort to help newly freed species purge council control systems from their technology and society. Working with alien scientists, she discovered that many species had been far more advanced than the council allowed them to believe. The aliens had deliberately suppressed innovation and independence, keeping their subjects dependent and weak. "Your people were building interstellar ships before the council arrived," Lisa explained to a group of hydro scientists. "They convinced you that your technology was primitive and gave you inferior replacements that kept you under their control. The revelations were shocking. Species after species discovered that their own suppressed technologies were superior to anything the council had provided. The bird-like E3 learned that their ancestors had developed flight-based engineering that surpassed council spacecraft design. The aquatic hydros found records of underwater cities and submarine technologies that made council vessels look clumsy by comparison. General Patricia Stone established the Human Exploration Corps, but not for conquest or expansion. The Corps was dedicated to finding other species who might need assistance in throwing off their own oppressors. Patricia believed that humanity's greatest strength was not their ability to fight, but their willingness to help others find the courage to stand up for themselves. "We're not building an empire," Patricia explained to her officers. "We're teaching the galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for, and that no species has to accept tyranny just because someone claims to be stronger." The first Exploration Corps mission departed for the Omega Sector, where intelligence reports suggested several species were still under the control of council remnants. Captain Dale Fisher commanded the expedition, carrying not weapons of conquest but tools of liberation, communication equipment, technical knowledge, and most importantly, proof that the council could be defeated. On the council homeworld, the remaining leadership faced a choice that would determine their fate. They could either fight a hopeless war against the entire galaxy or accept the reality that their empire was finished. Some counseled desperate resistance, suggesting the use of biological weapons or planet-killing technologies against rebel worlds. "We still have weapons that could sterilize entire sectors," argued War Master Kethron. "If we cannot rule, perhaps we should ensure that no one else can either." But High Chancellor Morthak had finally learned the lesson that humanity had tried to teach from the beginning. Some fights could not be won through superior firepower or threats. When an entire galaxy refused to be afraid, even the mightiest empire became nothing more than a collection of bullies with expensive toys. "No," Morthak declared, "we have lost. To continue fighting would only prove that we learned nothing from our defeat." The Council's formal surrender came exactly 1 year after humanity's refusal to negotiate. The document was signed not in some grand ceremony, but in a simple meeting room on Haven Station, with human representatives witnessing the end of the galaxy's oldest empire. Agent Maria Santos, now serving as humanity's intelligence coordinator, established networks that would prevent any future attempts at galactic domination. The new communication system she designed ensured that information could flow freely between all species, making it impossible for any group to maintain control through ignorance and isolation. The Council's greatest weapon was never their ships or their planet killer. Maria explained to the Alliance leadership. It was their ability to keep species isolated from each other, to make everyone believe they were alone and helpless. "We're making sure that can never happen again." The galaxy began to heal from 50 millennia of enforced stagnation. Trade routes opened between species that had never been allowed to communicate. Scientific knowledge flowed freely, leading to innovations that surpassed anything the Council had achieved. Art, music, and culture flourished as different species shared their unique perspectives and traditions. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Earth Defense Force, looked out at the stars from his office on Luna Base. The galaxy was no longer a place of fear and oppression, but a community of free peoples working together toward a common future. The alien ship that had arrived with such arrogance was now a museum piece, a reminder of what happened when tyrants tried to negotiate with those who refused to be intimidated. The phrase, "humanity refuses to negotiate," had become legendary across the galaxy, but its meaning had evolved. It no longer meant simple stubbornness or defiance. It had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that freedom was not something to be bargained for, but something to be demanded and defended. Children of a dozen species learned the story of how one world's refusal to bow down had freed an entire galaxy. The lesson was simple but profound. Sometimes the most powerful response to overwhelming force is a single word that echoes across the stars. No.